Well, at least we made sports center. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, it's good to be here. You know, this always feels fun in the month of May. Kind of the annual tour of speaking engagements and different things, and being at the Houston Touchdown Club always seems to be the one that kind of kicks things off for me, which is fun because we've got a lot of cool things to talk about as it pertains to our program. You know, the month of May for me is a little bit more of downtime. Our assistant coaches are on the road spring recruiting. Our players are finishing up school and finals, and then they get some downtime, and then we all kind of reconvene after Memorial Day, and we get back to it June, July to get ready for August. So it's a good time. It's a good time to talk Longhorn football, and we'll see how it goes today. Hopefully everyone enjoys it.
Fire away with questions.
Sark, I want to ask you about, now that you're through this spring, you guys had a successful season. I know you put a lot of work into the culture of the program. When you lose a lot of key guys, how do you ensure culture carryover for new guys who haven't been a part of it, who come in and think, well, this is a program that wins 10 games every year? How do you ensure that carryover with when you integrate new guys in the program and guys at the club?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, you know, because it was hard to put my finger on it early on when I talked about, you know, this team has a lot to prove. I really think there's a group of veteran players that have a lot to prove, you know, and it dawned on me kind of watching the draft last weekend, but I think about Jake Majors, I think about Gunnar Helm, I think about Kelvin Banks, I think about Quinn Ewers, I think about Jaden Blue. On the defensive side, like I think about Jade Barron, I think about Alfred, I think about Barron Sorrell. So there's a nucleus of probably another 10 to 15 guys. If I literally went through every guy, that is, I feel like they've got a lot to prove. And as much as it is, I feel like they have a lot to prove, maybe not so much to y'all or to the fans. I think they feel like they've got a lot to prove to that locker room, and they've got a lot to prove to those 11/13 guys who just left, that we're ready to step in and lead. And that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. Anytime we have a chip on our shoulder at anything that we do, right, we're willing to go even further with that. And so I do think we've got great leadership in there. I think that we've recruited a really competitive team. You know, I went back a couple of years ago, I talked about that signing class of how many guys were on championship caliber high school teams and competed for state championships and so on and so forth. Well, now that's in our locker room. So I think that there's a kind of the underswell in there is A, there's a lot to prove, but yet B, there's a lot of competitive players in there that want to be great, and they don't want to just be, you know, known as what last year's team did, but hopefully there's more out there for them to go do. So I feel like we're in a pretty good spot.
Coach, how finite is the regimen for your players the next couple of months by position group, and how much does leadership matter in these few months?
When you say finite, what are you referring to?
Like what they can do and what they have to do individually and collectively as position groups when they're not, you know, back in drills in August.
Well, I think that's critical. You know, the summers have changed for us in college football. There's been a ton of change in college football, but pretty dramatically over the last year and a half, 2 years now, to where we actually get to go on the field with the guys in the summer, where we didn't get to do that before. And so we have to manage our time right with the amount of time they spend working out, the amount of time they spend in the classroom learning systematically, the amount of time we spend on the field with them, working with them on fundamentals and techniques, the amount of time they spend running on the field and throwing on their own, and the amount of time we spend on culture building. And so, like anything, right, I think balance is critical because we're going to get back to work in June, and my goal is that we're playing January 20th. That's a long road, right? That's a long road, and the last thing I want is our team coming out of training camp already tired of football after June, July, and August. And so we've got to build this thing the right way. We need to stay creative as coaches in all aspects of how we're trying to teach, how we're trying to get our players to develop. But again, I think development is holistic. You know, we're not just trying to develop the player, we're trying to develop the man, right? And so what does that look like from a classroom perspective? What does that look like in the community and how we serve our community? What does that look like from a leadership standpoint? How do we serve others, so on and so forth? So there's a lot that goes into it. Balance is critical, but I think balance is what's going to help us for the long road, because you think about starting up in June and playing well into January. That's a long road.
Steve, during the season you talk a lot about the teams growing. I'm just curious, with the season now long in the review, how did you grow as a head coach in 2023?
I don't know. We'll find out. I don't know. I always just try to stay. I think it's important for me, at least. I never want to go stale. I never want to just go, hey, we had a good season, rinse and repeat, and let's do the exact same thing all over again. Because every team takes on a different personality. There's different leaders. There's different personalities individually, which ultimately make up the team. So I try not to get stale. I'm analyzing our summer and how we're going to do our culture work. I'm analyzing schematically. Are we utilizing our personnel the right way? Are there new schemes out there? Can I go visit with people to find different things to make sure that our players are really engaged? And so I think that's, I don't know if I learned that about myself, but I do think that that's important for me, is that and not allowing our coaches to go that way. Now, we should not ever just change just to change, right? If we've got something good, let's make sure that we continue to try to enhance that. But again, I just don't want to live in this world of rinse, repeat. That was exactly what it needed to be. We're always trying to find better ways to do things to maximize the team that we have.
Coach, every player wants to be a star on the team, right? But when you can get a guy like Jordan Whittington drafted, Keelan Robinson drafted, Roshan Johnson playing a role, is it easier for you to sell the team concept to guys that, hey, if you buy in and play roles, you can also get a lot of success?
Well, it's something that we've been preaching. And fortunately, now I've got some stats to back it up, right? Team success is what creates the foundation for individual accolades, honors, and awards. It doesn't work the other way around. And so now that I can give our players a 3-year study on 5 and 7, 0 draft picks, 8 and 5, 5 draft picks, 12 and 2, 11 draft picks. It's not a coincidence. The NFL likes to draft players off of winning teams, winning programs. Just look at the top 5 teams this past draft: Michigan, Texas, Alabama, Washington, and Florida State. And it was an anomaly this year for Georgia. They had 8 guys picked. They didn't have their normal 15 that they have. So my point is, right, I think our players are really understanding when you're part of a really good program, it's not always just about the stats. It's about how you can contribute to the team's success. And then if you can do that, the NFL is going to find those guys on those teams because they want to create that culture and they want to keep their culture of winning and whatever that looks like. And so I do think, yes, we've got some great things to point to now along the way, from specific players to our own growth as a program to just real stats from the NFL of what's happened in the draft. And so there's a lot to lean into there, but I think it is advantageous for us.
Are you able to talk about transfer portal additions yet?
No guys yet.
Not yet.
In
Sorry,
general,
that's John's fault.
in general, obviously you have somebody in mind, but what else are you looking for maybe in the portal in this spring window with guys that have jumped in?
Yeah, I think that the portal's like you guys have heard me say, there's a lot of challenges to the portal. We recruit these high school kids for a year and a half, 2 years, sometimes almost 3 years, and we get to know them, their family, their coach, their aunt, their uncle. We know so much about them. When the portal comes, the challenging part is, how do you get to know them if you didn't have any prior relationship with them or where they're from? And so that's probably the biggest thing for us. We're not so hung up on what position a certain player plays or doesn't play. Do we think they can help us on the football field, and can they enhance our culture off the field? Again, we're at a point right now, we don't have to take a whole lot of risks because we do have a deep roster. We've got a good football team. We've got a great culture. And oddly enough, when guys don't fit that, they kind of stand out, right? There's a competitiveness about our team that is real. There's a culture about our team that is real, and so you try to find those things in the recruitment process. Well, when you're just doing the transfer portal and you got 3 days, 5 days, 8 days to figure out if a kid's coming or not, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and so we're a little bit probably more cautious than most teams when it comes to that. But again, I think because of what we have is pretty sacred to us. I don't want to lose it, but I'm sure there'll be a guy or two here that we find out, figures out, kind of fits what we're doing, and then we'll see if they come or not.
Steve, as a program, do you guys want to embrace this SEC buzz? Are you trying to ignore it? How are you guys kind of handling this as you head into next season?
I mean, it's kind of like a lot of the things that we've had to in our time. I mean, I think we definitely recognize it. We're excited about it. It's a great league, extremely competitive, really talented players, excellent coaches. Week in and week out, the challenges that it possesses. But at the end of the day, it's like, let's acknowledge it like we do, and then, okay, now what do we need to do, right? And what are we doing today to try to help ensure that we're putting our best foot forward when the opportunities present themselves? So it's exciting, that don't get me wrong, and I think that from a university standpoint, from our athletic department standpoint, I feel like we're kind of on the forefront of that from a football perspective, especially being a fall sport where we're kind of one of the first ones to go compete. And so we want to make sure that we do our part, and we know it's going to be a heck of a challenge. It's a really, really good league. And the moment you think, you can take a break, the next team coming in is probably better than most people think. So you've got to be prepared for it, and you got to be prepared for the grind of the season in the SEC.
Sark, in this never-ending change to college athletics, a lot of people think that this next phase with House versus the NCAA is going to make dramatic changes. What are your thoughts on the potential for players to get even more money from the revenues? And as a follow-up, how do you keep up with all of this and the implications for your program?
Well, I just try to stay light on my feet, not to try to get stuck in one spot. No, I've said this all along, like, you have to be adaptable today in college football and in college athletics. We've had an immense amount of change over the last 3 years. And we're not done. And there's nothing wrong with change. Like I always say, change is inevitable. We're either getting better or we're going to get worse at anything that we do. And I really think as we come through on the other side of all this discussion of transfer portal, NIL, revenue sharing, whatever else you want to talk about, I think we're going to come out on a side where we're going to feel good about college football. I think the popularity of college football right now is at an all-time high. People love watching our sport. They're excited about it. People are excited about some of the conference realignment that's happening. People are excited about an expanded college football playoff. People are excited about rivalries getting renewed. Everyone's worried about conference realignment, that we're losing rivalries. Well, there's some good ones that are getting renewed too. And so I think in the end, when the dust all settles, whatever rules that they have in place for us, it's going to be important for myself, the University of Texas, our entire athletic department, to remain adaptable, to stay on the cutting edge of what those rules are. And I think that we've done that here in a short period of time since NIL has been started. But as we gravitate towards, and if we get into revenue sharing and things of that nature, that's going to be vitally important as well. We've got some really smart people at UT, and I trust their judgment, and I trust that we're going to be in a good spot however this thing shakes out in the next 12 to 16 months, whatever that ends up being.
Steve, what's your level of concern with the secondary, especially cornerback? Because it didn't look that good in the spring and last year.
Didn't look that good according to who?
Well, I saw some of your cornerbacks get beat. So
You saw who?
I'm sorry?
I couldn't hear you.
I saw some of your cornerbacks get beat badly and some defense. Were you happy with them? I mean,
Saw Kelvin Banks get beat too. He's going to be all right.
yeah.
So we're going to be just fine. We're going to be just fine in secondary. I think we've got a lot of versatility back there. Manny Muhammad going into year 2, I'm excited about him. Jalen Gilbo getting back into the fold from where he was in year 1 and probably a better version of him today. I'm excited about his versatility to go along with Jahdae Barron. and his versatility, and Jade having the ability to play multiple positions, Jalen having the ability to play multiple positions. Love the addition of Andrew Makuba from Clemson. I love the growth of a Derek Williams, of where he's at from where he was. I love the position change for Jelani McDonald, having had his first spring at safety. I think he's got a bright future for us there. The veteran leadership of Michael Taft is big. I think Gavin Holmes, year 2 for him, is going to be big for him. And then we've got some puppies back that are learning how to play. And just like any other position, all right, those guys need to continually get developed. So to sit here and judge a high school kid who should still be going to his high school prom over how he got beat in the spring, I think would be rushing to judgment.
Sark, you touched on something that I find interesting. You said January 20th, which is obviously way later than we've ever played college football as the goal. So how are you trying to balance what's going to be the longest season that you ever had, if you guys are fortunate to get there? And I guess, do you adjust things that you do in the summer? Do you adjust things you do in camp to prepare for a long season like that?
Well, I think what's important is, we still have to prepare our team to play, right, on a lot of levels. But I also know how vitally important our depth is, and that we're going to have to play the bulk of our roster in those first 4 games. We have to expose our players to playing football. And you start thinking about 16 or 17 games, that's a long road. And that's a lot of potential injuries that could come across my desk. And so, point being, I don't want to wait till December or January to throw somebody in there who hadn't played all year. I've got to expose these guys. I think too, we're gonna look at some of our practice habits, especially in season once we get going. I don't want to say we're going to a total NFL model, but how do some of the best NFL teams practice, right, to keep their team fresh for that long? We're not going to get that break in December where you have a month to just get your injured guys back. I mean, you start playing, and as long as you keep winning, you have to keep playing. So we have to look at a lot of different things there, and that research is kind of already underway. We've got a great sports science department that supplies me with a ton of information, but we need to really look at this thing the right way to make sure that we're at our best when our best is needed, December, January, to put ourselves in position.
Coach, did Ryan Wingo have as good of a spring as it appeared that he may have had, and were there other freshmen who may have stood out to you during the spring?
Yeah, I thought Ryan had a really good spring. I think I'd referenced him a couple different times as things got brought up of just, he moves older. He's just stronger, he's faster that way than most kids when they come in. There's a real humbleness about him that I appreciate. He just comes to work, he works hard. He tries to improve, he tries to work on the things that you ask of him to do, but he has a skill set that is definitely unique. And so I'm pleased with kind of 15 practices into him of his college career of kind of where he's at, but there's still a ton of work to do for him. I like the 2 young running backs. I thought they provide a lot. I love what Jordan Washington brought as a freshman. Should still be in high school. I like what Trey Owens brought for a kid who should still be in high school. Defensively, all those guys on the defensive side of the ball all kind of took turns where they flashed for me. Whether it was an Alex January, a Colin Simmons showed some things, a Zena, a Jordan Johnson-Rubel, Kobe Black, so we see a lot of the flashes from them. For young players, one of their biggest challenges is finding a level of consistency, right, to where they can perform to the best of their ability at a level field. I'd much rather that than the flash plays up and the not so good plays down. If we can find that with them, they have a better chance to contributing for us.
You mentioned you try not to get stale. Is that one of the reasons why you continue to call plays? Like, does that help keep you sharp, like the scheme part of it?
I don't know. I think that's part of it. I enjoy our game. Like I said, I love college football. I love football in general. I love the kind of art of our game, and the art of building a team, the art of strategically trying to game plan somebody, the art of calling plays in the midst of, the psychological warfare with the other play caller on the other side of the ball. So there's a lot, I think, that goes into it. And I always wonder, like, when you get hired, I got hired as the offensive coordinator from Alabama, and we were pretty good. And I would hate to think that I would take away the thing that I probably did best, right? Because that was part of the reason I got the job, right? And so, but I've got a great group around me. Our offensive staff is really, really good. Coach Flood, Coach Milwee, Coach Choice, Coach Jackson, Coach Banks. I mean, these guys are some of the best at what they do in all of football. And so we do a lot of collaborative work and even on game day with the stuff that we're calling. So I'm fortunate to have that group around me, but I'm in no rush to give it up, that's for sure.
Thanks, Coach.
Alrighty, y'all. Thank you.